Hello. Okay, for those of you returning to the channel, welcome back, and for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me. Here is my spoiler-free review of Drop, a mystery thriller directed by Christopher Landon. And Christopher Landon first came to my attention with the movie Happy Death Day, a film that I had a hell of a lot of fun with. So I have been looking forward to this. I've liked sort of the look of the movie from the trailers. It has kind of like a Alfred Hitchcock sort of 90s vibe about it. And I just feel like the premise sounds very interesting. It sounds like it's going to be fun. So yeah, I've been really looking forward to checking this movie out. And so the story of Drop follows a Violett Gates, a widowed mother who ventures into the dating world after years of trauma. During her first date at a high-rise restaurant, she begins receiving threatening messages via an app called DigiDrop. These messages reveal that her son and her sister are in danger, forcing Violett to comply with the mysterious sender's demands while trying to uncover their identity. So yeah, Drop. I mean, this is in many ways a psychological thriller as well, because you've got our main character, played by Meghann Fahy, who plays Violett, this woman who has survived domestic abuse. And this trauma sort of that's there within the character is conveyed beautifully by Meghann's performance, but also from a visual perspective. And that is something that I really admired about this movie. Because, you know, this film does explore some real deep, complex human themes, very real themes, but it's not a movie that's too focused on getting overwhelmed by those themes as well. You know, this is a film that's designed in many ways for you to be, yes, emotionally swallowed up within the character's journey, but to also be on this thrilling, fun ride with these characters. I mean, this is a thrill ride, and I did have a hell of a lot of fun with this movie. At the same time, I found myself caring for our main characters because of that emotional current that is instilled throughout the movie, even though it doesn't get overwhelmed by it. I just think Christopher Landon did a beautiful job, a fantastic job at conveying the psychological aspect or element of our character's journey through the visuals, through the way in which this movie is directed. And there is something very Alfred Hitchcock about the way in which this movie is constructed and how the narrative plays out. And it does have that kind of very 90s vibe to it. Like, it kept reminding me of Die Hard because we're in this high rise. It was in many ways for me personally like watching this kind of very 90s psychological thriller with a dash of Die Hard and a dash of Alfred Hitchcock and M. Night Shyamalan. And yeah, I had a hell of a lot of fun with this. I really enjoyed it. It's a very sharp, tight, contained experience that's all aided by the performances, the writing, and like I just said, you know, how the movie was constructed through a visual perspective, through how the camera would be used, the set design, just how you know, the reveal of the restaurant itself. There were just so many elements within this movie, from, like I said, the writing, performances, set design, that sort of really helped bring to life the psychological nature or aspect of this story and sort of the psychological state of where our characters are at without it over-explaining. Like, don't get me wrong, there is a moment actually in the third act where I felt like there was just a little bit too much expository dialogue where, you know, a character just sort of starts spewing all this information to us, and I'm like, oh, really? But there is just that one moment in the third act for me. But overall, just the film is very clever in how it sort of explores its themes and conveys what our characters are feeling from a sort of a mental perspective, you know, through a psychological perspective, whether it be sort of how the camera would zoom in on our main character's face, to the way in which it would incorporate the text messages. It was just an incredibly immersive experience as a result. And I just felt like the tension that's created throughout the first, say, 30, 45 minutes of this movie was incredible. And it's all, again, helped or aided by the performances from the cast, as well as that kind of very clever, sharp, witty writing where, you know, there are times where I actually had to cringe. I was dying inside because of the situation that we find our character in. But the writing was done in such a way, as well as how the dialogue was delivered. I felt like I was there watching this actual date play out at times. And it was painful to watch, but in a good way. And I just want to touch on the movie from a visual perspective again for a moment, because it is something that I really admired about how this experience was brought to life. Like, there is so much being said through a visual perspective, whether it's how the camera is used during certain moments, to how it would follow our main character down a corridor, to the set design, to the beautiful music, by the way, which also does a great job at conveying that kind of the psychological state of where our characters are at. Ben McCreary composes the music here. I'm a big fan of Ben McCreary. I absolutely adored his work on Battlestar Galactica, as well as many other TV shows and films. But his score here does a fantastic job, again, along with every other element, you know, from a visual perspective, to the set design, to the acting. Just does a great job at conveying the kind of the psychological state of where our characters are at without saying too much. And it's enough for you to get emotionally wrapped up within the story without it being too incredibly intense, because I personally don't think that that's what the movie's intentions were. You know, this is a movie that is designed in many ways, and just from a, you know, aesthetically, you know, this is a movie that wants you to have fun. It wants to take you on this fun, entertaining thrill ride that still gets you emotionally involved with the story, but, you know, it's not too bothered, or it's not too concerned with getting bogged down by it or smothered by that, even though, you know, the themes that it does explore are very integral to the story. And I just feel like with the writers and Christopher Landon do a beautiful job at kind of really balancing all of that out to create something that, yes, to some degree is emotional, but it's also fun. You know, it's a fun, entertaining thrill ride where you don't come out of it going, oof, you know, that was emotionally draining. But it's a type of movie that kind of takes you back to a certain era of films, like from the 90s. And I kind of just really like that aspect of the movie. And I just think tonally, it works very well. I mean, you've got this kind of very dark humour or dry wit running throughout it, which, you know, if you've watched previous Christopher Landon movies, you know, you'll know what to expect when it comes to the humour, but it works very, very well. And I just think the movie, with what I felt like they were setting out to achieve here with this experience, I think they did a really good job. I do think the film somewhat falters a little bit in its third act, especially the final scene. Yeah, there was something very awkward about the final scene, which in many ways, you know, it's awkward because it's supposed to be awkward, but it was also a scene where it was like, it almost like the writers were struggling to come up with a way in how to conclude the story as well. But they're just minor gripes, because as an experience overall, this was a very enjoyable, entertaining, fun thrill ride that was very sharp and clever with what it was that they were attempting to achieve here. You know, it's a movie that in many ways doesn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time get you emotionally involved to some degree, and a lot of that is aided by the performances from our main cast. Like Meghann Fahy is superb here. I really dug what she did with her character, and just how her character's journey sort of evolves through the story. And like, you know, I can't say too much because this is a spoiler-free review, but again, it's kind of in many ways, it's quite a deep, complex performance. And, you know, it's a performance that says so much without her character saying it all for you. Without there being, this exposition dump every couple of minutes. There is so much being said through how she brings the character to life, and then also along with the writing in how sort of the character evolves and how sort of her character plays a part in sort of the mystery aspect of the story, which I really dug. And once we get into the third act, that's where kind of a lot of my sort of the minor gripes that I had with the movie sort of came to light. At the same time, I just had a blast. Like, it sort of goes up a gear within the third act, and it goes wild. And that's where I feel like kind of that 90s thriller vibe really sort of comes to life, and that is within the third act. Like, it just goes all out crazy. For example, it could just be a moment, a conversation between two of our characters, to sort of how sort of our third act sort of evolves and sort of how it plays out. And I was beaming, I was smiling year to year, because it's sort of really sort of, in many ways it's over the top, but it also works for the type of film that I feel like they were crafting you. Going back to sort of the tone and how all those different elements. Yes, it gets a little wild, it gets a little bonkers, and it's, a little crazy, but it kind of really sort of hones in, I feel like, on the type of movie that they are setting out to make you, which is that kind of very fun, entertaining thrill ride, and there is just something very satisfying about it as well. I mean, there's a moment which literally did just, it in many ways, it getting kind of very excited here talking about this moment, and I'm trying to sort of pull myself away from saying too much, because this is a spoiler-free review. But just the way in which the third act sort of evolves, and sort of what happens, and just what happens within the climax. It was entertaining, it was fun, and it was it was satisfying. It was fun, it was satisfying. Yeah, it's a little generic, perhaps in many ways, where we've seen it kind of before, or, you might have a moment where it is very exposition heavy, but at the same time, due to how the sort of the experience was crafted up until this point, and just sort of the execution of the moment, it's all within the execution. I felt like, yes, in many ways the third act is kind of, paint by the numbers, we've seen it before, but due to sort of how the movie pulls you in, it at the same time feels refreshing and new, even though it's familiar, if that makes any sense. And I just found it incredibly satisfying because of the journey that we're already on up until that point. So yeah, Drop for me did a really good job at sort of taking all these different elements, whether it be the humour or the themes in which they're exploring with our characters, that psychological sort of aspect or element of its story, and do something that sort of ends up creating what I felt like was a very effective, immersive experience. Like, there's a moment within the third act where I felt myself getting quite teary-eyed, but it was more of joy. I felt this kind of, there was a sensation of joy. I'm not going to tell you what moment that was, but it was like you get so caught up within sort of this character's journey of Violett and, with her son. And there's just something about how it's sort of brought to life from all those different elements, whatever it be, the writing or the performances, that kind of just really get you caught up. And it's like, again, this isn't an incredibly intense or heavy experience. This is a very fun, entertaining thrill ride, but the way in which it balances those kind of deeper, darker, very real human themes, along with sort of the mystery thriller aspect of it, I just think it was all beautifully done. It was almost surgeon-like, and it was quite refreshing in many ways to have an experience like this. It does take me back to movies from the 90s. It kind of has that sort of aesthetic to it, or vibe to it. It's not perfect, like, it's not a perfect movie, but it's one that I had a hell of a good time with. I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend you check Drop out. And so yeah, this is enough rambling from me. They are my thoughts on Drop. and I will be giving drop. They are my thoughts on Drop, Christopher Landon's latest. But what do you guys think? Have you seen it yet? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It would mean an awful lot to me. I am slowly creeping towards that 500 milestone. As of recording this video, I'm currently sat at 492. And just a big thank you to everyone that has subscribed over the last couple of weeks, months, and just years. Every one of you, it means an awful lot. It will always overwhelm me that so many of you do want to follow just some random Welsh geek ramble on about film and pronounce things very incorrectly. And just, yeah, another big thank you to everyone that has connected to the channel, whether it be liking, commenting, subscribing. It means an awful lot. So that's it from me for now. Thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.